He posted a notice for a ranch cook at noon. A single widow with children answered it. The wind carried a faint scent of metal and earth, a smell that reminded everyone here that life on this planet was not easy, but it was alive. Marcus Hale stood outside his small ranch house, brushing dust from his hands and squinting at the blank horizon. He had lived here for nearly 15 years. The land was stubborn, unyielding, and the machines he relied on often faltered at the worst possible times. He had learned to trust humans over machines, though human help was far harder to find. That was why today he had done something he didn't normally do. He had posted a notice for a ranch cook. Not just any cook. Someone who could handle life in a place where the nearest market was days away, and every meal required care, patience, and a little creativity. He stared at the notice nailed to the weathered bulletin board outside the small general store. It read simply, Ranch Cook NEADED. Apply 18 noon. MARCUS Hale, REDSTONE Ranch. It was a simple note, but to Marcus, it carried the weight of hope. He had been running the ranch alone for months now. The chores, the cooking, the repairs, the animals, all of it fell on him. It wasn't that he couldn't manage. He did. But managing was not the same as thriving. At precisely noon, a small, dust-covered vehicle hissed to a stop in front of the ranch. Marcus was wiping his hands on his worn work pants when he saw her step out. She was a single woman, plain but with an air of quiet confidence. Her hair was pulled back into a braid, and her hands were rough, though not from laziness from work. She carried a satchel, and by her side were two children, one no older than 8 and the other perhaps 10. Their eyes were wide, curious, but they stayed close to her, following each step carefully. Marcus straightened and walked toward them. "You're here about the notice?" he asked, keeping his voice steady but welcoming. The woman nodded. "I am." "Name's Lydia Marsh." She extended a hand and he shook it firmly. There was strength in her grip, a sense that she had faced challenges and survived. "This is my children," she said, gesturing to the pair. "Eli and Mara." Marcus glanced at them, noticing how they seemed to size up everything at once. The animals, the tools, the small house, even him. There was intelligence in their eyes. He nodded. "All right, come on in. I'll show you the kitchen first." The ranch kitchen was small but functional. A few pots hung from the wall, the stove was old but reliable, and the shelves were stocked with canned goods and dried food. Marcus motioned toward it. "It's simple, but it works. You think you can handle this?" Lydia smiled faintly, scanning the room. She bent down slightly to talk to Eli and Mara. "We can handle a lot more than this. Don't worry." Marcus couldn't help but notice the calm authority in her voice and the children's immediate trust in her. He shrugged lightly. "All right, let's see what you've got." The first task was simple: prepare a meal from the ingredients on hand. He handed her a few vegetables, some grains, and a small jar of spices. He expected a basic meal, something edible. What he did not expect was the ingenuity that followed. Lydia worked quickly but thoughtfully. She chopped and mixed, adding small touches that turned simple ingredients into something aromatic and warm. Eli and Mara watched, occasionally helping to wash vegetables or fetch utensils. Marcus stood in the doorway, arms crossed, and couldn't help but be impressed. When she served the meal, it was more than edible. It was comforting. The grains were fluffy, the vegetables tender, and the spice blend had brought out flavors he didn't know were possible with such limited supplies. He took a bite and the warmth of the food spread through him, not just because it was good, but because it felt like care had been poured into it. This is good," he said, trying to keep his surprise in check. Lydia smiled, a little tired but proud. "I've learned to make do with what's available. There's always a way." Marcus studied her, sensing there was more than cooking skill here. "Always a way, huh?" he murmured. "This planet, it doesn't make things easy." She looked at him steadily. "Humans don't need easy. We need clever, we adapt, that's how we survive." The words struck him. He had always relied on his own knowledge, his machines, and his stubborn will to keep the ranch running. But humans adapting, humans innovating, that was something different, something stronger. After the meal, Lydia helped clean up, teaching the children to wash dishes properly and organize the kitchen. Marcus wandered outside to check on the livestock, glancing back occasionally. He saw them working together, learning from each other, solving small problems as a team. It was impressive. By late afternoon, he decided to take her on a tour of the ranch. There was the small greenhouse where he tried, often unsuccessfully, to grow vegetables, the water recycling system, which often leaked, the barns and pens for the livestock. He watched her closely, gauging her reactions. Instead of complaints, Lydia made suggestions. "If the water system had a small catchment here," she said, pointing to a low spot near the greenhouse, "it might collect runoff from the roof. You could use it for the plants. And the compost from the animals could go directly to the garden in a bin system. It'll improve the soil faster." Marcus raised an eyebrow. That was practical, efficient, innovative. And yet it wasn't just theory. He could tell she had thought it through, probably tried similar ideas elsewhere. "What about the animals?" he asked cautiously. "You don't need to handle them if you don't want to." She shook her head. "Animals can teach you a lot about patience and observation. I don't mind. Eli and Mara can help too. They're fast learners." Marcus felt a small smile tug at his lips. For the first time in months, he considered a future where the ranch wasn't just surviving, it might thrive. And it wasn't because of machines or luck. It was because of humans. As the sun dipped behind the rocky horizon, casting a golden glow over the dusty land, Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in years: hope. He looked at Lydia and her children, busy examining a stubborn irrigation valve that had given him trouble for weeks, and realized that he might not just be hiring a cook. He might be inviting a new beginning. The children laughed softly when Eli accidentally splashed water on Mara's shoes, and Lydia laughed along with them, her voice carrying across the yard. It was a sound that seemed to chase away some of the loneliness that had hung over the ranch for years. Marcus cleared his throat. "You've got a clever mind," he said to Lydia. "And these two, they're not just kids, they could teach me a thing or two." She looked at him, tilting her head slightly, a small smile on her face. "We all have something to teach, Marcus. The question is whether anyone is willing to listen." He nodded slowly, considering her words. He had listened, and he could tell that he wanted to continue listening. As night fell over Redstone Ridge, Marcus walked to the front porch, looking up at the stars. The planet's sky was darker than Earth's, but the stars shone brighter, scattered like diamonds across the vast black canvas. In that quiet, he realized something remarkable. Humanity had a way of thriving even in the harshest conditions, and sometimes all it needed was a chance. Tomorrow, he thought, we start for real. And somewhere deep inside, he knew that the ranch, and perhaps even the settlement, would never be the same again. For the first time in years, he felt ready for what was coming. The morning sun spilled over Redstone Ridge, painting the rocky slopes in soft gold. Marcus Hale was already awake, moving through the ranch with the familiar rhythm of routine, checking the livestock, inspecting the irrigation system, and adjusting the small greenhouse vents to protect the fragile plants from the dry wind. It was a routine he had known for years, one that rarely changed. Until now. Lydia Marsh had promised to arrive at dawn to help with the day's chores. True to her word, she appeared at the front gate just as the first rays of light hit the dusty ground. Eli and Mara trailed behind her, carrying small baskets for the morning harvest. "Good morning," Lydia said, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. Her voice was calm, steady, full of purpose. "I thought we could start with breakfast and then move on to the greenhouse." "The plants need water before the sun gets too strong." Marcus nodded. He had noticed something the day before. Her mind worked differently. She didn't just complete tasks. She observed, thought, and then improved. He had spent 15 years working the ranch alone, and yet here was someone who could see solutions he had never imagined. Inside the kitchen, Lydia set to work. Eli and Mara washed vegetables and sorted grains while she moved efficiently, but with a gentle touch. Marcus watched, curious. She didn't follow recipes exactly. Instead, she created combinations of flavors, using small amounts of herbs and spices to transform simple ingredients into something extraordinary. "Why do you add just a pinch of this?" Marcus asked, pointing to the small jar of dried herbs. "Because a little goes a long way," Lydia replied. "You don't need to overwhelm the ingredients. You want to bring out what's already there." Marcus nodded slowly. He had always relied on efficiency and routine, not creativity. Yet, as he tasted the breakfast she prepared, he realized there was something different here. It was not just food. It was care, thought, and attention turned into something tangible. The children finished helping with the meal and took their places at the table. They were eager, alert, and curious, asking questions about the food, the plants, and even the machines. Marcus watched them with a mixture of pride and surprise. Children on frontier planets often grew up too fast, learning only what was necessary to survive. Eli and Mara, however, were learning to think, to question, to create. After breakfast, Lydia suggested they move to the greenhouse. The small glass structure was battered by the constant wind and the harsh sun. The plants inside were fragile, and despite Marcus' careful attention, some had failed. Lydia knelt beside a row of seedlings, her fingers brushing the dry soil. "These plants need a little more care," she said softly, "but I think we can improve the system." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "How?" Lydia smiled faintly. "See that drip line? It loses too much water to evaporation. If we create a small shade system and adjust the flow, the plants will get enough without wasting water. And the compost from the animals can be used to enrich the soil faster." Marcus listened carefully. It made sense. Simple adjustments that would have taken him months to experiment with, she could see instantly. "All right," he said finally, "show me." Together, they adjusted the irrigation system. Eli and Mara helped by carrying buckets of water and moving small tools. It was a slow, careful process, but as they worked, Marcus noticed something remarkable. The children were learning quickly. They weren't just following orders. They were thinking, experimenting, and suggesting small improvements. By late morning, the greenhouse looked different. Small shades had been placed over delicate plants, water flowed evenly through new channels, and compost bins were ready to nourish the soil. Marcus felt a small thrill of pride. He had spent years trying to improve the greenhouse alone, but today, humans working together, had made it better in a few hours. Lunchtime came, and Lydia prepared another meal, simple but inventive. She used leftover grains from breakfast, combined them with fresh vegetables, and added a small amount of protein from the preserved supply. Marcus watched, impressed once again at her ability to create more from less. "This is amazing," he said quietly, almost to himself. "I never thought food could taste this alive." Lydia glanced at him with a smile. "It's not about the ingredients. It's about the effort, the care, and a little creativity. Humans have a way of turning almost nothing into something." Marcus nodded slowly, thinking about the machines he had relied on for so long. They were efficient, yes, but lifeless. Humans, however, adapted, created, and improved. He began to understand something he had never fully appreciated before. Ingenuity, imagination, and care were stronger than technology alone. After lunch, Lydia suggested they explore other parts of the ranch. Marcus hesitated at first. The children were small and the terrain was rough. But he trusted her judgment. They started with the small pen where Marcus kept his sheep. Some of the fencing had been damaged by windstorms, and water troughs were inefficiently placed. Lydia and the children began moving troughs to more central locations, making it easier for the animals to reach water without crowding. They reinforced the fence with simple adjustments, using materials already on hand. Marcus watched in awe as Eli and Mara suggested small changes, angles for the fence, water flow adjustments, and even ways to keep the feeding area clean. He had always known humans were resourceful, but seeing it in action, especially in children, filled him with quiet admiration. By late afternoon, they moved to the storage shed. Supplies had been haphazardly stored for months. Lydia instructed the children to sort, label, and organize the containers. She also introduced a simple tracking system, writing down what was available and what was needed. Marcus observed, realizing that her method could prevent waste and ensure they never ran out of essential items again. As the sun began to dip low, casting long shadows across the ranch, Marcus felt a shift. This was more than a cook or helpers. This was a team, a family. He had spent years surviving alone, but today, he had witnessed humans collaborating, thinking, and innovating in ways that machines could never replicate. Lydia gathered Eli and Mara near the greenhouse, showing them how to check soil moisture and adjust small vents. The children followed her instructions carefully, asking questions, testing small ideas, and learning from their mistakes. Marcus stood back, silently observing, and realized that the greatest strength humans had was not physical power, but the ability to think, adapt, and improve. As night fell, the ranch was quiet. The wind had softened and a few stars peeked through the clear sky. Marcus sat on the porch, watching Lydia and her children move inside, laughing softly as they cleaned the kitchen. He thought about the day's work, the improvements, the lessons, and the laughter. For the first time in years, Marcus felt something he had not felt in a long time: hope. Not just for the ranch, but for the future. Humans could adapt, improve, and thrive even in harsh conditions. It was not brute strength that would ensure survival, but creativity, ingenuity, and care. He realized that he had been wrong to believe he could manage everything alone. With humans like Lydia, Eli, and Mara, the ranch could do more than survive. It could flourish. Lydia emerged from the house a moment later carrying a small notebook. "Marcus," she said, "I've been thinking. The greenhouse isn't the only area we can improve. The water system, the storage, even the way we handle livestock, there are ways to make everything more efficient. But we'll need time, patience, and cooperation." Marcus nodded. "I think we have all three." Lydia smiled faintly. "Good. Tomorrow we start with the water system. If we get that right, the rest will follow more easily." Marcus looked out over the ranch, feeling a sense of purpose he had not known in years. He had posted a notice for a cook, expecting help with meals. Instead, he had found ingenuity, creativity, and a reminder of what humanity could do when it worked together. The night deepened and the wind carried a soft whisper across the land. Marcus leaned back, staring at the stars. For the first time in years, he felt confident that the ranch, and perhaps the settlement, could thrive. Not because of machines or luck, but because humans had the power to imagine, adapt, and create. And he knew that tomorrow, and the days that followed, would bring even greater challenges, and even greater opportunities to see what humans were truly capable of. The sun rose slowly over Redstone Ridge, casting long, golden shadows across the ranch. The wind had softened since yesterday, leaving the air warm and calm, perfect for work. Marcus Hale stood by the small irrigation pond, scratching his head. Water management had always been a challenge on this planet. The systems were old, fragile, and prone to failure. Yet yesterday's work in the greenhouse had shown him one undeniable truth. Lydia Marsh and her children had ideas, smart, practical, human ideas that machines could never match. "Good morning," Lydia called as she arrived, Eli and Mara skipping behind her. They were carrying small toolkits, buckets, and a notebook filled with observations and sketches from yesterday. The children were smiling, eager to begin the day's work. Marcus couldn't help but smile in return. "Ready for the water system?" he asked. Lydia nodded. Yes. If we get it right, the ranch will be more efficient, and the plants will thrive even if the wind dries out the soil. Marcus led her to the irrigation channels, worn and cracked from years of neglect. Water trickled slowly, barely enough to reach the distant fields. He had tried repairs many times, but the system was stubborn. Machines had failed, pipes had cracked, and even his careful planning could not keep water flowing reliably. Lydia crouched beside the channel, her fingers tracing the flow. Eli knelt next to her, watching carefully. Mara moved along the edges, noting where water was pooling and where it ran dry. "Here's the problem," Lydia said finally. "The main pipe has small cracks. Water leaks, reducing the flow. The slope is uneven, so some areas get too much, others too little, but it's fixable. We can redirect some flow, repair leaks with simple materials, and create small reservoirs to catch excess water." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "You think this will really work?" "It will," Lydia replied confidently. "We just need careful planning and teamwork." Marcus nodded slowly, feeling a spark of hope he hadn't felt in years. They began the work immediately. Lydia instructed Eli and Mara to gather clay, small rocks, and scrap materials from the shed. Marcus fetched tools, hammers, and sealant. For hours they worked together. Marcus watched as Lydia combined practicality with creativity. She molded clay to seal leaks, adjusted pipe angles with careful measurements, and directed water to small holding areas she had designed. The children were quick learners, following instructions and offering clever suggestions. "Why don't we make this reservoir slightly deeper here?" Eli suggested, pointing to a sunken patch. "It will hold more water, and we can let the plants drink slowly." "Good idea," Lydia said, nodding. "We'll try it," Mara added, "and we can put stones around the edges so the soil doesn't wash away." Marcus was impressed. The children weren't just helping, they were thinking, experimenting, and improving the system. It was remarkable. Humans could adapt and innovate, even in harsh conditions, and he was witnessing it firsthand. By midday, the new channels were in place. The small reservoirs held water steadily, and the repaired pipes allowed flow to distant fields that had previously been dry. Lydia tested the system carefully, observing how water moved, adjusting valves and repositioning small barriers to ensure efficiency. Marcus couldn't help but marvel at her skill. "Marcus," she said finally, "this will work, but it's only the start. We can improve the greenhouse irrigation next and create a rotation system for the livestock to make sure water is always available for all areas." Marcus nodded slowly, realizing she was thinking not just for today, but for the future. This wasn't just a cook, a helper, or even a teacher. Lydia and her children were visionaries. The afternoon sun was high when Marcus led them to the greenhouse. The new water system there was simple but effective. Lydia explained how the runoff from the roof could be captured in small containers and fed to plants gradually. The children eagerly followed instructions, adjusting small hoses and checking soil moisture. "This is amazing," Marcus said quietly. "I never thought of using runoff like this." "Humans always find ways to use what's around them," Lydia replied. "It's part of our strength. We don't wait for perfection. We adapt, improvise, and improve." Marcus watched her, realizing that her words were true not just for survival, but for life itself. She had arrived expecting to cook, and instead, she was transforming the ranch with clever human ingenuity. As they worked, Marcus noticed how the children handled problems. When a small pipe cracked, Eli suggested using clay to seal it temporarily, while Mara adjusted the water flow to prevent flooding. Marcus had seen machines fail, and even skilled adults struggle to repair them, but here were children, thinking logically, experimenting, and solving problems faster than he ever could have imagined. By late afternoon, the greenhouse water system was stable. Marcus took a step back, feeling a surge of pride and relief. The plants were thriving, the soil was moist, and the system was simple, efficient, and repairable without complex machinery. Lydia smiled, observing the results. See, humans can do remarkable things when they work together. Marcus nodded. I see it. Today, I've learned more about ingenuity than I have in years, not from machines or manuals, but from you and your children. The children laughed, running ahead to check on small improvements they had made, adjusting vents, moving containers, and organizing soil nutrients. Marcus realized that he had underestimated them. In the harsh frontier, human ingenuity wasn't just useful, it was essential. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, Lydia suggested they take a short break. She brought out a small notebook and began jotting down observations and ideas. Tomorrow, she said, we can focus on the livestock. I have some thoughts on rotation systems that will help with feeding and water distribution. If we get that right, the ranch will function almost like a small ecosystem. Marcus looked at her, amazed. Ecosystem. You think this ranch can really run smoothly without constant struggle? I do, she said firmly. But it will take planning, patience, and cooperation. We'll need to keep improving every day. Marcus nodded. He felt something he hadn't felt in years, confidence. Not just in the work, but in humans. Machines were tools, yes, but humans. Humans were limitless when they applied their minds, worked together, and cared about what they were doing. As evening fell, the ranch glowed under the soft light of the setting sun. Marcus stood outside, watching Lydia and the children organize tools, repair small damages, and discuss plans for tomorrow. The sight was more comforting than he could have imagined. For the first time, he felt that the ranch wasn't just surviving, it could thrive. The quiet was interrupted by Mara's voice. Look, Marcus, the water flows evenly now. All the plants get what they need. Marcus smiled. You're right, Mara, this is amazing. Eli added, and the animals will have enough water too. Tomorrow we can fix the troughs and make everything even better. Marcus looked at Lydia, who nodded slightly, a quiet satisfaction in her eyes. She had not just taught the children, but inspired them. They were learning to think, plan, and solve problems. It was a vision of the future, a frontier settlement not dependent on machines, but on human creativity and collaboration. As night fell, Marcus went to the porch to watch the stars. The sky was clear, brilliant, with countless points of light. He thought about what had happened that day. A cook had arrived at the ranch, but what he had gained was far more than meals. He had found ingenuity, teamwork, and a glimpse of humanity at its best. He realized something important. In a harsh world, survival was not enough. Humans could do more than survive. They could thrive. With creativity, cooperation, and determination, even a small ranch on a distant planet could become a model for human potential. Lydia and the children appeared on the porch, tired but satisfied. We did a lot today, Lydia said softly, and tomorrow will bring new challenges, but we'll handle them just like today. Marcus nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. Yes, and I have a feeling that together we can do almost anything. He leaned back, letting the cool night air wash over him. For the first time in a long time, he felt hope. Not a fragile hope, but a strong, steady belief in what humans could do. And somewhere deep inside, he knew that the ranch, and perhaps even the entire settlement, was on the verge of a new beginning. A future built not on machines alone, but on ingenuity, cooperation, and the remarkable ability of humans to adapt, innovate, and thrive. The first light of dawn crept over Redstone Ridge, touching the jagged rocks with a gentle glow. Marcus Hale stood outside the ranch house, taking in the quiet calm of the morning. He had grown used to the rhythm of frontier life, the early mornings, the wind, the endless chores, but today felt different. Today felt like the start of something bigger. Lydia Marsh and her children arrived at the ranch just as the sun began to climb higher. They were eager, energetic, carrying notebooks, small buckets, and tools. Marcus noticed the calm determination in Lydia's movements, the spark of curiosity in Eli's eyes, and the careful attention Mara gave to every detail. They were ready for the day's challenge, the livestock. "Good morning," Lydia called, smiling at Marcus. "Today we focus on the animals. Water, food, and shelter, they all need improvement, but I have a plan that can make things run more smoothly." Marcus nodded. "I'm ready. Let's see what you've got." They started with the pens. Marcus had long struggled to keep the animals healthy and hydrated. Water troughs were poorly placed, some feeding areas were overused while others were neglected, and cleaning the pens was a constant battle. Lydia crouched beside a small trough, examining it closely. "The water flow here is uneven," she said. "Animals crowd where it's easiest to drink. Some areas never get enough. We can adjust the troughs, create small reservoirs for overflow, and use gravity to make water accessible without constant refilling." Eli and Mara listened carefully, their small hands helping move buckets and pipes. "We could also rotate the animals," Eli suggested. "Some stay here, some go to the far pen, so everyone gets water and food evenly." Mara added, "And we can make simple shelters for shade and protection from the wind. It'll keep the animals healthier." Marcus was impressed. The children weren't just following instructions. They were thinking creatively, solving problems like experienced ranch hands. He realized again that humans, even young humans, had an ability to adapt that machines could never replicate. For hours, they worked together. Marcus adjusted the larger structures while Lydia and the children moved smaller equipment. They shifted troughs, repaired fences with simple tools, and added small reservoirs to catch water for later use. They made temporary shelters from tarps and scraps of wood, creating shaded areas where animals could rest. By midday, the pens were transformed. Water flowed evenly, the animals had access to food and shade, and the work seemed almost effortless with teamwork. Marcus took a step back, observing the results. It was remarkable. The ranch, which had struggled for years, was starting to function efficiently, powered not by machines but by human ingenuity. Lunchtime arrived and Lydia prepared a simple, hearty meal for everyone. The children eagerly ate, while Marcus reflected on the morning's work. It was clear that her ideas had improved the ranch in ways he had never imagined. "Marcus," Lydia said after the meal, "the ranch is stronger now, but the land still challenges us. The soil is dry, wind is strong, and storms can come without warning. We need to prepare for any surprises." Marcus nodded. "You're right, there's always something we can't control." As if on cue, dark clouds began to gather on the horizon. A storm was approaching, sudden and fierce, a reminder that life on this frontier planet was never easy. Marcus felt a familiar twinge of worry. Yet looking at Lydia and the children, he felt calm. They were ready. Humans could adapt. Humans could thrive. The first drops of rain fell lightly at first, then the wind picked up and the rain began to lash against the ranch. Marcus rushed to secure loose equipment, while Lydia instructed the children to move animals into the newly created shelters. The pens held strong, and the reservoirs they had built collected water efficiently. "See," Lydia shouted over the wind. "This is why planning matters." "Everything we built today is working." Marcus couldn't help but smile. The animals were safe, the water was flowing, and the pens held up. He realized that it was not strength or machines that had saved the day. It was foresight, teamwork, and human creativity. The storm raged for hours, but the ranch weathered it well. Marcus walked through the pens, checking the animals and the water flow. Everything was in place. The greenhouse vents were secure, the water system continued to function, and the pens protected the livestock. For the first time in years, Marcus felt that the ranch could withstand the planet's challenges, not because of luck, but because of humans working together. After the storm passed, a calm settled over the ranch. The air was fresh, the soil moist, and the plants in the greenhouse glistened with droplets. Marcus stood outside, looking at Lydia and the children as they moved through the ranch, checking systems, adjusting small leaks, and noting observations in their notebooks. "You've done something remarkable," Marcus said quietly. "I've spent years managing this ranch, and I've never seen it run this smoothly." Lydia smiled. "It's not me, it's all of us. Humans have a way of solving problems, of adapting and improving. When we work together, we can handle almost anything." Marcus realized she was right. Machines could fail, technology could break, and even the best planning could falter. But humans could think, adapt, and create solutions that no machine could. That evening, the family gathered around the small fire pit outside the house. The sky was clear, the stars bright, and the air was filled with a quiet sense of accomplishment. Marcus sat back, watching Lydia and the children discuss plans for the next day. They were full of ideas, eager to continue improving the ranch, making it not just functional but a place where humans could thrive. Eli spoke first. "Tomorrow, we could make small windbreaks near the greenhouse. That will protect the plants even more from the wind." Mara added, "And we can make a simple system to collect rainwater from the roof. That will help during dry days." Lydia nodded. "Excellent ideas. That's exactly how we'll continue, small improvements day by day, using what we have." Marcus felt a warmth in his chest. The ranch was not just surviving anymore. It was growing, evolving, and thriving because of humans. He realized that this was the true power of humanity, the ability to adapt, innovate, and improve even under the harshest conditions. As night deepened, Marcus walked to the porch, looking at the stars. The sky was vast, full of possibilities. He thought about the journey ahead, the challenges the ranch would face, and the incredible potential of humans working together. For the first time, he felt a sense of true confidence, not in machines, not in luck, but in humans, in Lydia, in Eli and Mara, and in the potential of humanity itself. "Tomorrow," he thought, "we will continue to improve, and together there is nothing we cannot achieve." The night air was calm, the storm long gone, and the ranch quiet. Yet in every corner, in the pens, the greenhouse, and the water channels, the evidence of human ingenuity was clear. Marcus knew that this was only the beginning. Humans had shown their strength, not through power or technology, but through creativity, cooperation, and determination. And as he watched the stars twinkle over the rugged landscape of Redstone Ridge, Marcus felt certain of one thing: humanity would thrive here, no matter the challenges, because humans had a remarkable ability to adapt, learn, and triumph. The morning sun stretched across Redstone Ridge, casting its golden light over the ranch. Birds chirped softly, and a gentle breeze carried the faint scent of fresh soil and growing plants. Marcus Hale stood at the edge of the greenhouse, surveying the changes that had taken place over the past few days. The ranch, once struggling, now hummed with life and order. It had not been magic nor luck. It had been human ingenuity, cooperation, and care. And the proof stood before him in the form of Lydia Marsh and her children, Eli and Mara, who were already busy at work, planning the day ahead. "Good morning, Marcus," Lydia called. "Today we focus on long-term improvements, windbreaks, rainwater collection, and optimizing the greenhouse environment." Marcus nodded, feeling a sense of excitement he had not known in years. He had expected a cook to help with meals, but what he had gained was far greater: a team, a family, and a vision for the future. The children ran ahead, carrying small wooden stakes, cloths, and buckets. They laughed and joked as they worked, but their minds were alert, observing, learning, and experimenting. Marcus could see the spark of ingenuity in them, a spark that reminded him of humanity's greatest strength: the ability to adapt and improve. Lydia led Marcus to the open field near the greenhouse. "The wind here is strong," she explained, "and it can damage the plants. But if we build small windbreaks with simple materials, rocks, stakes, cloth, we can protect the crops." And with careful placement, The wind will still help ventilate the greenhouse without harming the seedlings. Marcus watched as she began placing stakes in the ground, weaving cloth between them. Eli and Mara followed her lead, testing angles and adjusting the materials to maximize protection. Marcus joined in, moving rocks and helping secure the structures. By midday, a series of low windbreaks surrounded the greenhouse, creating a calm area where the plants were shielded from harsh gusts. The greenhouse itself seemed healthier, more organized, and more productive. The water system worked flawlessly, and the plants were thriving. "Look at this," Lydia said, smiling. "Everything is connected. Water flows to the plants, windbreaks protect them, and the soil is enriched with compost. Each improvement supports the others." Marcus nodded slowly, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. He realized that the ranch had become more than a place to survive. It had become a thriving, living ecosystem, powered by human creativity and effort. After lunch, they turned their attention to the rainwater collection system. Lydia had identified areas where runoff from the roof could be captured in simple containers, stored, and used during dry days. Marcus was amazed at how efficiently she planned every detail, turning what had once been wasted water into a valuable resource. Eli and Mara eagerly followed instructions, carrying containers, adjusting hoses, and marking collection points in Lydia's notebook. Marcus marveled at their energy and focus. These children were learning not just to survive, but to think, plan, and improve their environment, a skill that would serve them well throughout life. By late afternoon, the system was complete. Rainwater now flowed into multiple small reservoirs, ready to nourish the greenhouse, the crops, and even the livestock pens. Marcus felt a surge of pride. This was not just a ranch, it was a model of human adaptability and innovation. As the day continued, Lydia proposed they check the livestock. The animals moved calmly, drinking from the newly placed troughs and resting under the shade shelters. The rotation system worked perfectly, and Marcus noticed the difference in their behavior: healthier, calmer, and more energetic. "This is incredible," Marcus said, watching Eli gently guide a young lamb to water. "In just a few days, everything has changed." "The ranch is thriving," Lydia smiled, but her eyes were thoughtful. "It's not about speed, Marcus. It's about careful observation, small improvements, and teamwork. Humans are capable of incredible things when we focus on solutions rather than problems." Marcus nodded. He had spent years solving problems alone, relying on machines and routine. Now he understood the real power lay in people, their creativity, cooperation, and determination. As evening approached, the ranch glowed in the soft light of the setting sun. Marcus walked among the fields and pens, observing the fruits of their labor. Each plant, each trough, each structure bore the mark of human ingenuity. Even the children's laughter echoed like a reminder of what humans could achieve when they worked together. Lydia gathered the family near the porch, opening her notebook. "Tomorrow, we can start planning for longer-term improvements: small solar panels for electricity, seed storage for future crops, and a better composting system. Each step we take now will make the ranch stronger, more resilient." Marcus listened, realizing that this was more than a plan, it was a vision. A future where humans could thrive, not just survive, even in the harshest environments. He felt a surge of gratitude. Posting a notice for a cook had brought him more than meals, it had brought him hope. The children ran ahead, eager to discuss ideas for tomorrow. Eli suggested experimenting with plant rotation to improve soil health, while Mara wanted to create small birdhouses to attract helpful wildlife. Marcus smiled. The children's curiosity, creativity, and intelligence reminded him that humans were capable of incredible things, even in a world that seemed unforgiving. That night, as the stars sparkled above Redstone Ridge, Marcus sat on the porch, reflecting on the past week. The ranch had transformed. Water flowed efficiently, Crops thrived, livestock were healthier, and the greenhouse had become a model of sustainability. And none of it had been achieved through brute force or technology alone. It had been achieved through human ingenuity, cooperation, and determination. Lydia joined him, sitting quietly beside him. "You see it too, don't you?" she asked softly. Marcus nodded. "Yes, humans, we can do amazing things when we work together. I've spent years trying to survive here, but now I see we can thrive." She smiled. "That's the essence of life on the frontier. It's not just surviving storms, droughts, or harsh conditions. It's about thinking, adapting, and creating solutions. And now, you and your ranch are proof of what humans can achieve." Marcus leaned back, gazing at the horizon. The ranch had become more than a place to live. It was a living example of human potential. And it all began with a simple notice for a cook, answered by a widow and her children who brought more than skill. They brought vision, creativity, and heart. The night was calm, and the wind carried a sense of promise across the land. Marcus felt a deep satisfaction. The ranch had been transformed, not by machines, not by luck, but by humans. Humans who observed, adapted, and improved. Humans who worked together, thinking creatively and acting with care. He realized something important. The future of humanity on this planet did not rely on advanced technology or powerful tools. It relied on people, on their ingenuity, cooperation, and ability to overcome challenges with intelligence and heart. In the days that followed, the ranch continued to thrive. Each morning brought new improvements, small inventions, clever adjustments, and careful planning. The children learned quickly, experimenting and observing, while Marcus and Lydia guided them. Together, they created a sustainable, efficient, and harmonious environment. Neighbors began to notice the changes. Travelers and settlers from nearby areas visited the ranch, curious about its success. They marveled at the thriving crops, healthy animals, and orderly systems. Marcus and Lydia shared their knowledge openly, teaching others how to adapt, improve, and thrive in harsh conditions. The ranch became more than a home. It became a center of human ingenuity. Visitors carried ideas back to their own settlements, spreading knowledge and inspiration across the frontier. Marcus realized that the true strength of humanity was not just surviving in one place, but sharing knowledge, learning from each other, and building a better future together. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the distant mountains, Lydia and Marcus stood outside, watching the children laugh as they moved between the greenhouse and the pens. "We've come a long way," Marcus said, a smile tugging at his lips. "Yes," Lydia agreed. "And we've only just begun. The frontier is full of challenges, but also full of opportunities. Humans are capable of incredible things if we observe, adapt, and work together." Marcus nodded. He felt a sense of pride, hope, and confidence. The ranch had been transformed, the settlement inspired, and humanity's potential had been proven. And it all began with a simple notice, answered by a widow and her children, who reminded him that humans could not just survive, they could thrive. As night fell over Redstone Ridge, the stars shone brightly, a reminder of endless possibilities. Marcus knew that the future was not defined by hardship, but by human ingenuity, cooperation, and determination. And with Lydia, Eli, Mara, and the spirit of humanity guiding the way, there was no challenge they could not face. The ranch, once struggling, had become a beacon of hope, a testament to human potential, creativity, and resilience. And Marcus Hale knew, with certainty, that this was only the beginning of a new era for the frontier.